Welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Meg Heaton. I'm a former reporter with the Hudson Star Observer, and in that capacity, I got to know our guest today pretty well. Duana Bremer is the executive director of the Salvation Army for St. Croix County, Polk County, Burnett County, Barron. Who knows how far her reach is. So she's been doing this a long time, and we've had a lot of communications over the years and written stories together. So and she is at the center of everything that goes on at Grace Place. So we're going to talk to you today about how COVID is impacting your job and your life. Duana?
You know, we should talk about that. And I think COVID has turned everyone's life upside down, inside out. It's just a new way of living. Even walking up to someone and shaking hands, you're so used to doing that, and it's just a different mindset. But at the shelter, I do want to stress one thing. We are still serving the community. We are meeting the needs of the homeless people in our community. We may be doing a few things a little bit differently than what we have before. When we're walking around the common area of the shelter, people are wearing masks. We're encouraging people to stay in their rooms for longer periods of time if they can. You know, there's not a lot to do in your room in a shelter, but we are encouraging that. The other thing is we're doing a lot of disinfecting, sanitizing, and cleaning. That's been something that we've always done, but we've taken a step further. We've got sprayers that we're spraying sanitizer throughout the building 2 and 3 times a day. As far as individuals coming into the shelter, we are accepting folks, we are giving them a brief screening, and we are taking their temperature just to make sure there are no issues with COVID. We have had a few individuals that have come, one, waiting for the doctor to give them the notification that they were clear. One came and they were in quarantine, needed to be in quarantine for a couple weeks. So we do have some funds for motel vouchers, and we are using those funds in those circumstances. But otherwise, we're doing pretty much the same thing that we've been doing. I mean, outside of these little safety issues.
Yeah. I think some people might not even know about Grace Place. Could you just give us a little background on that and how many beds there are and how long it's been up and running and where it is? Even I think some people don't even know where it is,
Oh, absolutely. And this is an interesting little story. I have to share this. Grace Place became Grace Place over 18 years ago. When we first started, we were located in Somerset, and we had a 24-bed facility. Now we have moved to New Richmond, and we have a 64-bed facility. And Peg, you and I were talking before we started that people in St. Croix County didn't even realize there were homeless people until Grace Place was formed. We outgrew our 24-bed facility. We moved 6 years ago now into New Richmond, into that facility, and we are still full all the time. I have to mention one little thing, though, that's kind of an interesting story. When Grace Place started, it started with a letter to the editor, no room at the inn. And it was written around Christmas time. At that same time, United Way read the article, Westcap read the article, and so did Salvation Army. And we had one little house in New Richmond at that time that we're housing one family at a time. So they all met, and this part's unbelievable. It was within 1 year of conception. That shelter was up and running.
Yeah.
And we continue to meet all the community needs for homeless people in our area again today.
Mm-hmm. And there are families there. I mean, there are kids that are in the shelter as well, right, with their parents?
Yes, I can talk about that. People always have the vision that the homeless person is someone homeless, standing on the street corner with a sign, "I'll work for shelter." That is usually not the case. What we're looking at with most of the folks that we're working with is we're seeing families. Some families just hit a bump in the road and they need us for a short time. Other families have greater barriers and need to stay with us longer. There was a time last summer, I think we had 14 children at Grace Place. Mm-hmm. So it's not just for single individuals, even though that's our image. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about for homeless folks is we're seeing an aging population. You know, I started doing this 18 years ago. We never saw anyone in wheelchairs. We never saw anyone on walkers, hardly ever. And now the population of homeless is aging. And we are very fortunate at Grace Place. We're able to accommodate those needs, but there are many shelters throughout the state of Wisconsin that don't have the ability to do that. And I do believe that as shelters, we need to start looking at that aging population because it's a different population than we've been used to.
And you're seeing, I would imagine with the impact of the virus and stuff too, you're seeing people that have never been in a situation like this before where they need help across the board in terms of aging. But yeah, as the baby boomers, as those of us are getting older, and then if you don't have that cushion, this could be a time when you need.
It could be horrible. And, I'm thinking, and you do think a lot of the folks we're seeing that are older, they don't have families. They don't have anyone, or their children live in another state. So you're worried about that navigation. As far as COVID goes, we have seen a little bit of an increase for shelter during COVID, but really what we're anticipating is once this starts to end, we are going to have clients that use their stimulus check wisely. They've been using their unemployment wisely, but it's just plain not enough money. So we're really thinking that probably come August, we're going to be helping a lot of folks with utility assistance, with rent assistance. So we're kind of looking at that direction. And I think that's going to be a big impact on our community because we don't want people to be pushed into homelessness because of this.
Right. And the Salvation Army has always done that. I mean, that's what the bell ringing money and all of that is for, a lot of it, right?
Oh, yes. And I should mention that, talking about bell ringing, money that is raised in St. Croix County stays in St. Croix County. It doesn't go anywhere else. It supports our community. And an interesting story, and I'm going to have to check my notes here for a second, but Salvation Army started their original bell ringing campaign, and I believe it was from a disaster that was in San Francisco. And they needed money to help people because it was a hurricane. A lot of ships were displaced, people were displaced. So a volunteer picked up one of the bells from one of the ships and started clanging it and ringing it. And that's what started the Red Kettle campaign, was her standing up. And I do have to say one thing, that's women's ingenuity. You knew you needed funds and she figured out a way to get it.
Get some attention. Yeah.
So, and since then, everyone's familiar with those red kettles that they see every Christmas and donating at the holiday time. But that does support people in our community. It also helps with transportation assistance. And I don't so much mean gasoline. I mean like car repairs. Because let's face it, we're in rural America. We have no public transportation here.
Yeah, and that's the focus that you guys have taken so often, is helping people maintain their jobs, even the people in Grace Place who, I mean, they're encouraged to go out and get jobs and all of that, and you guys support that as well.
And even right now, during the COVID crisis, our numbers are usually we can house 64 people. We are full, but when I say full, we're usually around 58 people. And the reason I say that is that's how the rooms are divvied up. In other words, you might have a family of 5, a family of 2, a single person. So even when I say we're at capacity, it might only be 58, 59, even though we can house 60, but it's how the family demographics divide up into the rooms. But it is very interesting. Even during COVID, half of the people at Grace Place have jobs. They are leaving Grace Place every day, going to work. We're taking their temperature when they come back, so that everybody else will be safe. But people that are in our shelter do work. And I think it's a little bit of a misconception, because I think people feel that homeless people are lazy, they sit around, they don't want to work. Well, homelessness is like any other segment of the population. Right. There are times when we will, there are lazy individuals, but there's lazy individuals in every sector or every employer. But most of the people do work. Jobs are, well, prior to COVID, jobs were very plentiful. So folks, if they weren't working, were usually working within a week of arrival.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a lot of support for that through Grace Place as well.
Right. Absolutely. We work with a self-sufficiency program because we want people to succeed. We don't want people to have to come back here again. We want them to move forward.
Yeah, because it's not just a question of them having a place to sleep. There's all kinds of support programs. Even for the kids, I know there's the tutoring, and I know with the kids that live there, you're probably doing some online learning and stuff with the districts that they're from, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I do have to say, with our tutoring program, that is one of my more favorite programs at the shelter. Every homeless child is behind in school. Mm-hmm. And most of them are behind 1 year or a year and a half. And it's not that their parents don't love them. Their parents do. But they're so busy worrying about putting a roof over their head. Homework is the last thing that they want to worry about. When they're at Grace Place, and every child's involved in our tutoring program, and the children improve by half a grade level. Wow. Another interesting thing that we try to work with too, and are conscious of, is changing a family's life so that they can be self-sufficient, they can move forward. They can do all the things any other functioning family would do in our society. A sad statistic is, though, I had to think about that a minute, but 96% of every child that is homeless sometime as a child will be homeless sometime in their adult life. And I've done this for 17 years, and we're already seeing kids that were at our shelter as a child and now are a young adult, and they're in the same predicament. And how do you stop that cycle? Yeah. That's very sad.
Well, and there's been support from the community. I mean, even though I think initially a lot of people weren't aware that there were homeless people or people who needed help in the area, but that's changed over the years, hasn't it?
Oh, it has. And I feel I'm really blessed to direct a nonprofit and a homeless shelter in an area that we receive so much community support. We're either receiving financial support, or having churches that have for 17 years brought in a dinner meal once a month, clubs, civic groups in the community that are bringing in dinner meals, church ladies bringing in quilts, bringing in bedding, bringing in pillows. And these are all things we need. And I really feel our community, they give what they can. If you can't write a check to us, you're bringing in a pillow, you're bringing in a blanket. And so I feel really blessed.
My favorite story is after you and I did a story one time around Christmas, and you needed a boiler, if I remember right.
Oh, yeah.
And we mentioned that in the story, and you got a call a couple of days later that said, "Tell me more about this boiler problem." So speaking of that, are there needs that you've got right now that you could look to the community for?
Yeah, and of course, I'm going to mention financial. That's always something a person in my position does not want to bring up, but we're feeling that we are going to receive so many requests for utility assistance and rent assistance, especially when this stops, that yes, we do need cash or donations of that sort. But there are other things that we need as well. Toilet paper, hand sanitizer, paper towels, disinfectant cleaners, because now, especially of COVID, we're going through a lot of that type of thing more than we had before. But household items like that, pillows, we're always in need of pillows. This is either with or without COVID, because when people leave Grace Place, they take their pillow with them. And we want to do that. We want to do that for health reasons, but we also want to do it as when they leave, they have nothing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. In terms of making cash donations, the best way to do that is how? On the website, or how?
Oh, the best way to do that is just send a check or we can take credit cards, so they could call Grace Place at 715-246-1222, and we can handle a credit card donation over the phone, or mail us a check to 505 West 8th Street, New Richmond. That is the best way to get money, and that secures that it does stay in St. Croix County.
Okay. And then if people do have these other items, the household items, would they just call ahead and say they're going to drop them, or how would you go about doing that?
They can call ahead, or they can just drop them off. If they want to call ahead, that's perfectly fine. Also, what we have is our inner door is locked because we're trying to avoid people coming into the facility, because who knows, but we do have a cart outside the door, and people can put their toilet paper or any type of donation on that. It's in a little alcove at the front of our building.
Okay, good enough. Is there anything else I haven't asked you about that you want to mention, or that and I'm assuming now that hopefully we can go ahead with the Red Kettle campaign as the year goes on.
Well, we're hoping that we can go ahead with the Red Kettle campaign, but otherwise it would be like a virtual Red Kettle campaign. So it would be, we'll do something like that. I don't know if we'll be using Zoom and having someone standing there ring a bell for an hour, but we will be doing it. But we will be doing some things. It's just virtual. It's just going to be different. We're hoping not, because bell ringing is kind of a tradition.
Yeah. Well,
you see a bell ringer out there, it's Christmas time.
It's Christmas, and people do it together, and whole families, and you've had that marathon for how many years? That was started by an ingenious woman too, if I remember. Helen.
Oh, you know what? I have to talk about that too, and I know Helen would not care if I shared this story with you, but it was 1 year, and I always have a goal in mind of what we need financially to meet the needs of the community, and we were far from it. I was so stressed. This was a year that we actually were giving out food baskets at our Christmas party, and I do remember praying for turkeys. By the way, we did get turkeys. So anyway, it was just a stressor of a year. And Helen called me, and she said, I've got an idea. I'm going to ring 30 hours straight for $30,000. And I'm like, great idea. So the first year we rang, I think she got real close to her goal. I think it was right around 15. So she got like halfway there. I have to say it took her 3 years to end up actually exceeding 30,000. And the year that she did that, she looked at me and she said, I'm done. I'm never doing this again.
I remember
she said, I'm getting too old. When Helen called me, and I did not find this out for years later, she said she was paying it forward. And I said, what do you mean? And she said it was years ago. She was driving at Christmas time to visit her family in Michigan, had 3 little kids buckled in the back seat of her car. The car conked out. The Salvation Army met her, repaired her car so she could continue for her Christmas holiday. And I always thought that was such a neat story when she shared that with me.
She told me the story when I did the story on her in the paper, and
I know it's
forward,
yeah, that was a big story. And really, thanks to Helen, because now the Sheriff's Department, St. Croix County, has done it for the last couple years. We had a couple insurance guys that did it for a couple years. But now Helen's thoughts of raising $30,000 have gone up to $180,000. So we got to say thank you to Helen, because without her idea, it wouldn't have happened.
Another incredible woman with a Salvation Army connection. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, is there anything else I haven't asked you about, Duana, that you want to mention?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything.
Good.
Unless you have any ideas of things.
Usually we can come up with something. But anyway, we look forward. We would encourage people to make cash donations if they can, or also to drop off those things that you need. And we wish you all the best at Grace Place.
Oh, thank you. And thanks to the community also for their continued support. And good to see you again, Meg.
You too. Thank you.